Mac Power Users, episode 699, Catching Up with TJ Luoma. Hello, everyone. It's David Sparks. I am here today, joined, as always, with Mr. Stephen Hackett. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm good. I've been through a real ordeal to be here today, but I'm here.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a minute. But before we do so, I want to introduce our guest today, a member of the MPU, Velvet Jacket Club,
Yes.
TJ Luoma. Sounds like diploma. Welcome to the show, TJ.
Oh, Velvet. That sounds lovely.
Yeah, I feel like you've been here enough. You get the fancy jacket.
Wow. Is there a special bathroom that we just get to use?
Well, we were going to build one, but we decided not to.
Okay.
I mean, there are limits to our budget. Maybe when we get to episode 700, we'll unveil a new MPU bathroom. I don't know.
Member perk.
TJ, welcome back to the show. It's so great to have you back. Before we get into the show, TJ, though, we do have a short, sorted story here from Mr. Hackett. Stephen, how are you surviving the weather?
It is, we're in the middle of a heat wave in the South, and, normally that would be a bummer, but it's really a bummer when, 25% of your county doesn't have power, which includes me.
Oh, no.
So I am not only recording just on a laptop with just on battery. It's fully charged, so I'll be okay. But I'm actually also recording on generator. So I have a little generator running on my back porch, and I have my refrigerator, my freezer, and my Wi-Fi plugged in. So here we are. I topped it off with gas, so we're good for the 2 hours. But it's been quite the week.
Yeah, this is literally the first episode of MPU to be powered by petrol. I think that's kind of awesome. And I wanted to share that because, Stephen could have taken today off to deal with that, but you know what? He found a way to make it work, and I think that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, can't miss having a Hall of Famer on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, TJ, for folks who don't know you, you are famously an automation nerd. You've come up with some great automations and things over the years. You're an active member in the MPU forum, but you're also a pastor, and you've got your flock, and you've got a lot of stuff going on there as well. And I just always can't wait to talk to you because you're always doing fun stuff. You are the epitome of a Mac Power user. And thanks for coming back on the show, buddy.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. I couldn't believe it when I looked back and saw that last time I was on, I think was 2019. I was like, oh, the before times.
Yeah.
And so now we can talk about everything that changed my setup during COVID. And I'm working from home now some. And so it's a lot's happened, but thrilled to be back.
Yeah, it is really good to have you back. And for more power users today, we're going to talk about TJ wanted to talk about mental health for nerds. And I think that's a very interesting topic because there are ways to get help using your technology. And that's the extended version of the show that's ad-free. If you're a more power user subscriber, we're going to be getting that later in the show today. But before we get there, I think we got to just start with a catch-up. We're going to get there later. But before we do, we got a little housekeeping, Stephen.
Yeah, we are halfway through my Kickstarter for the 2024 Apple History Calendar. Again, thank you to everyone who has backed it so far. You can get a really cool wall calendar, some awesome stickers, digital wallpapers, a digital version of the calendar. And this calendar focuses on Apple's services and retail businesses. So a bunch of stuff in there about Apple Store history and Apple's weird idea about the internet over the years, which there are a lot of them. So go check it out. It runs through the 14th, so just a couple of weeks left.
Yeah, people make fun of Microsoft with their slow adoption of the internet, but I feel like Apple has more wacky internet experiments than even Microsoft.
Yeah, they had a product in the 90s called Youth Central, where the kids could hang out online. Can you imagine that today?
Yeah.
Youth Central, I think, was my favorite thing that I didn't know about before going into this one.
Yeah. Well, you can get it on your wall and just head over to Kickstarter. We got a link in the show notes. Check it out. They're great. I will restate my usual practice with the Hackett calendar. Do not turn the pages over. Enjoy looking at them as the year goes by. It's really fun because the artwork is always amazing. And definitely get the version where you get the stickers. You want the stickers. Anyway, TJ, you are at rhymeswithdiploma.com. as your main home on the internet. But what, tell us a little about yourself for folks that missed the 2019 episode.
Okay. Well, I'm celebrating my 25th year of ordained ministry. I'm a minister in the Presbyterian Church USA. If you ever want a fun time, go and look up Presbyterians on Wikipedia, and you can see all the different branches of Presbyterianism. It looks like a weeping willow in a high wind. We've had our splits in the past. I've been in my current congregation for about 6 years, and which means that it's been basically half. I was here about 3 years before COVID. Now I'm hitting about 3 years after COVID. And I'm, speaking of calendars, I've got the calendar here, the 2023 calendar. I'm looking forward to turning it over in a few days because I'm taking the month of July off, which is always, and I did this last year for the first time. Of course, you work on Sundays in the church, but I do get a good amount of vacation time. And rather than kind of taking it piecemeal, started last year taking it in a big chunk. There is a lot of technology, believe it or not, in the church. That was true even before Zoom church and all the other stuff that went along with COVID changes and things like that. But I do find myself quite often, just today actually, was running through with the church secretary, how to go from, cutting up the video from Zoom to posting it on the website with the church secretary. So there's a lot of technology going back to, starting with the printing press and going now to Zoom and Vimeo.
Well, I always find it funny that we have a huge contingent in our audience of religious folk of all stripes. We've heard from Buddhists, we've heard from Muslims and Christians, and so many preacher types are using technology because that's how you get, that's one of the better ways you can use to get to people, and communicate with them and understand what they're looking for. And I always find it interesting because we hear from so many of them. I didn't realize, what a high percentage of them are using technology. Because I grew up, I was an altar boy. The priests I work with, they had no technology in their life, but there's a lot of Catholic priests now that are very involved. In fact, Brother Gabriel, I think he was on the show at one point, who's now a priest, is also very highly involved with using technology. You're not alone there.
No, and I usually hear from folks after I'm on, or folks who find me on the forums and go, "Oh, it's great to find another pastor who's involved in tech nerdyism." So we're definitely out there.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. And so, what is the gear you're using these days? One thing that's happened since the last time you were on the show is Apple changed its underlying architecture to Apple Silicon from Intel.
Yeah, that was a big change, obviously, and I jumped right on that. I had traded in my MacBook Air for a 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro early on in COVID because I was running Zoom church, and we started out just recording me, and then we decided we wanted to do sort of everybody on a big Zoom call. And I'll tell you, even with the 16-inch Core i9, I think it was, the fans were flaring up, and I could hear the fans on the recording, and it was just distracting in the whole thing. And so I grabbed a M1 MacBook Air pretty much as soon as it was available. Traded in my MacBook Pro for it, and absolutely love it. The thing is just it runs cold almost. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
The difference. And I had the 12-inch MacBook Adorable, which I had loved too, and I still wish they would go back and make one of those again. But the 13-inch MacBook Air is my sort of primary, everyday computer. And I got that with, I think with 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte hard drive. Absolutely love that machine, and hope that it lasts for a long time. David, I know you've said before you think the Apple Silicon Macs are going to last for a long time, and I hope this one will, because it was an investment, but it was a good investment. And I've been really thrilled with it, and haven't really been tempted by of course, as everything new comes along, and some people on the call like to update their Mac equipment very often. I won't point names. I won't point fingers or name names. But
well, I think you could point them anywhere at this point. I am definitely guilty.
I was going to choose who.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely can't point fingers because, like I said, I changed two computers fairly quickly from that during that time. And then it's one of these things when we've been talking about backups. It's always one of my things is talking about backups, and bootable backups have become a much more complicated situation in the Apple Silicon era.
Yeah. Yeah. We should talk about that for a second. I don't think we've kind of brought it up because, historically Carbon Copy Cloner and Super Duper made it very easy to create a bootable backup. But now there's a bunch of hoops to jump through, and I'm not entirely confident that it's going to work anyway. Where these clone software now are doing a much better job of cloning stuff, they're not necessarily making it bootable.
Yeah, and Howard Oakley's had a couple of great articles on his eclecticlight.co website talking about how this has gotten more complicated. And so, again, in a kind of, let's not point fingers at anybody. Instead of having a bootable backup, I got a backup Mac. I went on Amazon. I went on Amazon and I found myself an M1 Mac Mini.
Yeah.
And I've got that set up in my desk, in my office at home here, and got it set up with the ultrafine monitor, which works great for me. I know it's usual to hate on it, but it's worked great for me. I had a Dell monitor before that didn't work with any of the media keys with Mac OS, and the only mistake I made was that I got it with half a terabyte of 500 gigs of SSD. And boy, let me tell you, what a mistake that was. And, we say it all the time, the hard drive space, you can't expand on it. I did to kind of make up for it in a way. I went with Mac Sales OWC has something called a mini stack, which kind of looks like a Mac Mini. Yeah. You can put a couple of SSDs in. Yeah. And I did that afterwards. But, when I added all that up afterwards, I thought, I probably would have spent just as much money to get a real nice amount of hard drive inside my my Mac Mini. But one of the reasons I bought it through Amazon is because when I spend a certain amount of money, I can pay it off over 18 months. And that was one of the realities of,
Sure.
my financial situation. And so that's what I ended up doing. But boy, in hindsight, I really wish it's also hard to have one machine with one amount of storage and one with a different one, because it's like, oh, I feel like I've got plenty of space over here, but over here I'm constrained. And now, of course, it's difficult to figure out exactly how much free space you've got on your Mac in the first place, which is a whole other issue. So
yeah. Even that's more complicated than it used to be.
Yeah. And it's one of these things that, like, this seems like it should be a very simple number to show me, but all of a sudden I'm down to under 100 gigabytes, and then I'm back up to 200 and something. And I try really hard not to stress about it, but like I said, with that external storage, that's where I try to keep all my important files. And of course, I'm still running Backblaze and got all that stuff backing up to the cloud. And I've got a local backup here that I run as well. So I think I'm good, but it's just not having enough internal storage is just a big bummer.
Yeah, and it's not like the old days where you could crack it open and just replace the drive. It really is a one-time decision.
Yeah.
In your case, you were buying it as, your backup Mac, and it didn't match the storage of the one you were backing up. So that even would probably make you leery about putting more than 500 gigabytes on your main Mac, because then suddenly the backup isn't working right.
Well, the other thing that happened too is that now Dropbox can't be on an external drive.
Yeah.
And I always had my Dropbox folder on an external drive, and that way I could have my full downloaded Dropbox folder, and now I can't do that either. So yeah, it's definitely been my next internal storage bill is going to be expensive, but I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I just did that, and I spent more than I should have, but it's one of those things that was painful when you bought it, but afterwards it's so nice because you just don't have to worry about it. I would say that, in general, Apple did this for security reasons. They're making it just harder generally to have something boot up your Mac automatically when you plug it into, to keep the bad guys from using that as a strategy against you. But it does really change the backup strategy for a lot of people. In fact, I think we probably need to add that to a feedback show to talk about, ways around that and what we do, Stephen, the next time we do a feedback show, because I think a lot of people are kind of hitting a wall right now with their backup strategies since clones don't work anymore.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing how this security model has touched so many things. I mean, we were just talking about Dropbox and it underwent its change. I think most people have gone through now where it moves to the
Yeah.
new cloud storage API stuff, and your Dropbox is actually like hidden somewhere in your library folder and it makes an alias. It's all very strange. I've had
Yeah.
quite a bit of problems with that, including a couple weeks ago when I was on vacation. My Dropbox is being empty all of a sudden, and I paused it and restarted the
Oh
sync,
no.
and then it re-downloaded everything. I was like, "Oh, I don't like this. Like, what is
Oh
happening?"
no.
Yeah. It's all, because I make a living uploading recordings, and we use Dropbox as a backbone for that. And I had all these automations that just one day stopped working. So now I'm super careful to make sure things get uploaded to Dropbox. And again, it's safer. They're more of a team player on the Apple ecosystem because they've done this, which I appreciate, but it does make it a little worse too. And I'm sure they're not super happy about it either, but it just kind of is what it is. And I'm happy to have a secure computer. And sometimes I know that has a trade-off.
So that's your Mac strategy and how that's changed a little bit. Where are you with the iPad?
The iPad's been a big change too. My son went off to college. He's a music education major, and he took my 12.9-inch iPad Pro because I loaned it to him once for working with sheet music on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an old iPad. I think it was a 9.7-inch to tell you how old it was. And he was like, "Oh, this is great." I was able to see it. It was so great to work with, and the whole thing. And so I wasn't using it as much, so I gave him my iPad Pro. To tell you the truth, I didn't feel like I really needed an iPad Pro, and I wasn't really sure iPad Pro was for me. And so I replaced it with an iPad Air, 5th generation, the new one. I did get the incredibly expensive keyboard and trackpad that go with it because it's just such a better device with it, although
Agreed.
It pains you to. That's another bill that it hurts when you first buy it, but then it's great to have.
It almost feels like buying a second iPad when you buy the keyboard.
It does.
I don't know why it's not. I mean, it's less than that, but it's not that much less,
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to the iPad, the base model iPad.
Yeah.
But the iPad I use the most actually is I've got an iPad Mini with cellular, and this is my reading, sort of hanging out at the end of the day device. I've got no notifications on the thing whatsoever. It's my Apple Kindle really, and I've got not just books and Kindle books on there. I've got some audiobooks. I've got my RSS stuff on there. And it's just one of these things that's fun to be able to grab and take with me wherever I go, and know I can get online without having to worry about tethering. And so that's the one that I really end up using a lot. Matter of fact, I've used it to read a couple of pages documents that I've used for weddings and funerals.
Yeah.
I'll put a script, in a pages file in my iCloud, and then I'm not trying to shuffle papers while I'm standing up in front of everybody. And I've got this nice black cover on it, and makes it look maybe like a Bible if people aren't really paying attention to what I'm holding.
And that description is an Apple Kindle. I think that really lands for the way a lot of people are using that iPad Mini. You read books, you consume a little content on it, do a tiny bit of work, but it's in the Apple ecosystem. I like that. Now, do you use the iPad Air in your work at all?
A little bit, mostly, again, if I want to be somewhere else. And what I've been doing lately is leaving my MacBook Air at the church.
Yeah.
I'm there a couple days a week, and I'm home a couple days a week, working from home a couple days a week. So if I need, sometime in the evening, if I don't want to be in the office and want to be working on something, I use and again, that's the great thing with the keyboard is I can work on a Pages document or bang out some emails. And as we'll talk about later, a lot of my life revolves around dealing with email. So it's a great machine for dealing with that. And David, you've mentioned too about, not trying to make the iPad do more than it can do. And I had that kind of same journey where I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to focus this on what I'm really good at doing.
Yeah.
And tell you, one of the fun things I've been doing with it is sometimes I use it as a second screen at the office when I'm working on the iPad and I'm working on my MacBook Air. and use the iPad as a second screen to watch Major League Baseball, because I've got a Major League Baseball subscription, and that's a great screen for that. Way too expensive to buy for that, but it's been a fun thing to do with that. And I don't have a TV in my office, but it gives me the next best thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the iPad, if you have one, it's not a reason to buy one, but putting it on a stand next to your Mac. I mean, I keep banging the drum for the status board, iPad model. But I mean, even just to play YouTube videos or use it as you can make it I keep wanting to say caboose, but it's a sidecar. I wouldn't say caboose, but it's a sidecar.
iPad caboose.
It's a vehicle. You ride in it, but yeah, using it in sidecar mode where you can just drag a Mac app over to it, or the iPad apps are largely good enough for media consumption. Like you could put the Apple app on there and play Ted Lasso in the background. Although you should never play Ted Lasso in the background, you should watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But baseball is like sports are a good example because a lot of times, not a lot's going on, and you can have it playing in the background with no trouble.
Yeah, it's worked out great. And again, like you said, just having it as a second screen, not necessarily connected to my Mac in like sidecar mode, but as a sidecar, or that caboose thing is gonna stick with me. I'm gonna definitely hang on to that.
Sorry about that. I apologize. Apologize to the audience. You're on the iPhone 12, right?
Yes, I've got the iPad 12 Pro Max. And I realized as I was thinking about this, that this is the longest I've gone since the iPhone arrived without upgrading. Now, part of that is that my son needed to upgrade his phone when it came around. And the 12's still doing fine for me. The 13 and 14, had some cool things in it, but I wasn't really all that drawn to it. I'm expecting that I'll get the 15 when it comes out this fall, but my son dropped his phone last year and fortunately it was under Apple Care, and so we ended up replacing his. No, I'm sorry, that was the second one was under Apple Care. We got him a new phone, and like the next weekend, it popped out of its Apple case, and broke. So I replaced 2 iPhones in 2 weeks.
Yikes! Yeah.
Yeah. It's bad when I called up Apple to tell them that I needed to send one in, and I went to give them the IMEI number, and they said, "Oh no, we still have it here on file from when we sent you the last one last week."
Yikes! Well, Apple Care, baby. I think it's good when you're giving phones to children of any age. A good friend told me that when you have adulting children, like young 20s, it's like having a poor friend that thinks you're rich. And
yes.
I really feel that there's some truth to that and as parents, we're so, I find like one of my daughters is a teacher, and like they wouldn't give her an iPad and she really wanted one. I gave her mine. You just give them stuff, you can't help yourself.
And he's super responsible. I mean, this was just an unfortunate event, and it just fell the right way that it literally the Apple's own case popped off the thing and it landed, and had no protection when it landed. So.
Yeah. Hey, I can't judge. I mean, things happen.
You really can't.
Stephen, we still need to pray over your truck. This is the first time we've talked since you had your accident. And man, people jumped really quickly into making fun of that situation, but that must have been scary, man. I'm glad you're okay.
Most people were cool about it, but yes, it was scary, but the new one is safely upright in my driveway.
I'm glad.
I don't know if Stephen ever published pictures of what the truck looked like afterwards, like publicly, but first he told me it was an accident. I felt like, oh, that's on brand for Stephen, But then I saw the picture. When I saw the picture of the truck, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad you're okay.
Well, being upside down, that's all you need to hear. I mean, that seems to, that should never happen.
Anyway, TJ, for the first time, you got an Apple Watch. Tell us about that.
I did. I've always had a problem wearing watches. And so when the Apple Watch came out, I was like, oh, that looks nice, but I can't wear watches. And for some reason, somewhere along the line, I got into the point where I was like, really kind of frustrated about the whole thing. And I saw one on Woot, and they had refurbished ones. And I'm like, I'm just going to buy one and see if it fits and see if it's okay and see if it bothers my wrist. And I tried it on, and it felt perfect. And now I'm like 8 years behind everybody else who's had an Apple Watch, and I'm trying to learn the basics on this thing. But I do. I've got a Apple Watch in product red, and I've got a Pride band on it. and I get a lot of nice compliments on it, and I know what time it is, and I get a lot of. I'm really harsh on notifications. Basically, do and messages
Yeah.
are the only things that get through. But it's really useful for that.
Yeah, and if you are harsh on notifications and you know when your wrist taps, it's important. And,
Exactly.
You know, it allows you to keep your phone in your pocket more. I think there's a lot to be said for it. And if you're out there and you're worried about like I don't want to wear a watch, I would recommend, like TJ, get yourself one of those like fabric. I imagine your Pride band is one of those fabric ones. You get a breathable strap, and that makes it a lot more comfortable if you're worried about that.
Yeah, it's been great, and so yeah, I'm it is sort of weird to be the last kid on the block to get this thing and be like, wow, why isn't anybody talking about how cool this is? And be like, well, we talked about it 7 years ago when everyone else got one. Or how old is the Apple Watch now? 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, it went for sale in 2015, so we're getting there.
Yeah.
What is time?
What a
No one knows.
journey. And I will say, just we're going to talk about the new software when it releases, but I feel like this year's beta software for the watch is so much better. It changes the way you use the watch.
Stop.
Yeah, don't do that. It scares me because my understanding is once you put the beta on, you can't go back, and
Pretty
and that
much.
scares me
That's
to
a
do.
one-way trip, on the watch.
Yeah, but I want to do it too, but you're leading me into temptation. It sounds like maybe Steven.
Yeah, Steven makes the Mac Power users. I feel like, it's a little cowardly not to just
Oh,
wow.
Came right at you.
Yeah. Who promised not to buy a computer this year?
I know.
I do want to back up to notifications on the watch for a second. My advice to anyone, starting out with the Apple Watch is to do exactly what you've done and be ruthless with notifications, because out of the box, the watch is just going to mirror what you have on your phone. And a lot of people who I talk to and, family and friends, they don't necessarily want that. And I think the watch is much more useful that when it vibrates, it's really important, right? So it's not going off every time you get a notification on your phone. It's really a way to whittle down to just what's really vital to you. And, that changes over time. Like I revisit mine, every once in a while, but I still think that out of box, the watch is just too noisy for its own good.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, it was an adjustment at first. Although I'm even on my phone, I'm pretty strict about what gets through. But it was amazing, even to me, to find out how many I had. And yeah, it took a little time, but not that much time. And now everything, just notifications get denied more than they get allowed. So now that I've got it set up, it's really useful. And like you said, when you feel that tap and can just look down and know that it's not going to be something where you're going to roll your eyes or be disappointed that you looked at it, it's a whole different experience.
There's one last thing here we have to talk about. TJ, you're still duct taping discs to your monitor?
I shared that just for Steven. I knew he would love to hear that. Not on my laptop anymore.
That's good.
But
yeah. Okay, just for the listeners, at one point TJ sent us a picture of his laptop with an SSD just taped to the back of the lid. And, I know Steven disapproves of some things I've done, but I will say I've never done that.
Yeah, that was kind of out there.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was actually going to plug my podcast mic back in, and I had totally forgotten that they were there. And I wandered around the back of my computer. And I'm like, oh, hey guys, I forgot you're there. But again, it goes back to not having enough internal storage. I just and some of these are one of them's for Time Machine, and the other one is I still do run a carbon copy cloner, even though it's making a clone, not a bootable backup, whatever. Yeah. But they're still there.
Backup, yeah.
Yep. And they're SSDs, but I didn't want Steven to feel like I totally abandoned him, and I knew how much this meant to him.
Yeah, that sums up my feelings, I think.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by 1Password. Go to onepassword.com/MPU today. Get 20% off your subscription. These days, there's a lot of digital data we carry around that we need to keep secret. And that's just not passwords. It's also information about your social security or your medications or whatever it is that you need to keep private. 1Password is the application to take care of all of that for you. 1Password can securely store all of your secret data, your credit cards, your passwords. All you have to do is sign up for 1Password and remember that 1Password. That's why they named it. With 1Password, you can set up shared vaults for easy family or teams access, so you can share just the data you need. And you can share any 1Password item with anyone, even if they don't use 1Password. No longer do you have to put your passwords in text message threads or write it down on a sticky note. You can send it securely with 1Password to anyone. One of my favorite features about 1Password is the way they monitor and mitigate risks for you. They look for potential breaches with the companies you work with. They even keep a list of the passwords that get out on the dark web, and they compare it to yours, and they let you know if they believe your passwords have been compromised. This is so much more than just a place to store passwords. It is a security suite. Everybody needs one because the bad guys are out there and they're looking for you. Another thing I love about 1Password is their view on privacy. They can't see what you store in 1Password, so they can't use it, share it, or sell it, and neither can anyone else. You've heard about some of these password breaches with some of these other less secure services. They're regularly audited by third-party audits, and they have a huge bug bounty to help them act on threats before they can affect you. It is a secure solution to store your data, but it also gives you the convenience of having that data with your 1Password. Listen, if you want to check it out and learn more, go to onepassword.com/MPU. They've got a 20% off discount for MPU listeners. We're both big fans and users of this application. You do need help on the internet protecting yourself. 1Password can do that. Go check it out today.
TJ, you mentioned a little while ago that a lot of your working life revolves around email, and I'm curious what things you've put in place to manage all that.
Oh boy, this is where I'm going to get I'm going to get feedback. So I get a lot of email. I get a lot of personal email. I get a lot of, what they call bacon, that stuff that you kind of want, but you don't want clogging up your stuff. And I got a lot of stuff from the church, a lot of stuff. If somebody thinks about something related to the church, they email, 3 people and they copy me on it. And then those people reply and they copy me on it. And so pretty much anytime there's a conversation going on around church, I'm getting email about it. So I've done this thing, which I've had in place for a while now, and it's going to sound a little nutty, but it's worked for me, which is I've got 3 email apps. I've got Fastmail, and on the Mac, I'm using an app called Fmail 2. I've got my church email, which is in which is in MailMate. And I've got MimeStream, which is set up for my Gmail account. Now, my Gmail account is the account that I've had for ages. It was posted on websites back before we realized what a terrible idea that is. So it gets a lot of spam. It gets a lot of emails. When you have to give someone your email and you're not sure you want to give them your email.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the email address that I give to people. It's my Gmail address. Sorry if you're somebody I've given my Gmail address to, and you're now hearing that this is how I'm sorting things. But it really helps me segregate, in a good sense, the different contexts of if I'm not working, I don't open my work email app, and there's no chance that I'm going to accidentally see my work email, because that is a killer to me. It's just one of these things where you're just having a good day, and all of a sudden you hear about something that you didn't need to hear about until you were back at work, but now that you've heard about it, you've got to deal with it. And conversely, if I'm working, I can shut off my personal email and not, deal with, forwards from family members and, other things. My personal email gets probably the fewest of these. It's again, kind of like notifications. I'm kind of brutal with my personal email address that I've kept that to pretty much a small group of people. So when I get an email there, it's usually something important. Although because it's the one I've got my Amazon account with, I get a lot of stuff from Amazon, although I keep unsubscribing from things and then finding out that I've been subscribed to something else. So that's the beginning part of it. I've got a lot of email accounts. I do the same thing on my phone, although on my phone, I tend to just triage email. I do most of my email work on my Mac.
Well, let me interrupt there just for a minute. I don't think you're out on an island with the idea of using different apps for different phases of your life. And this is something I think some of these mail apps could do a better job of, frankly, is giving you a way to segregate stuff where you just want to do personal or work. And Apple tried to do that, last year when they said, like, for instance, certain mailboxes can not show up, depending on which focus mode you're in. And I think that's a step in the right direction. But what you're doing is probably the easiest way to do it with existing technologies. Just say, okay, personal mail goes in this account and this mail app, and work stuff goes in this other thing. And if you check your personal mail on the weekend, there's no risk of you getting sidetracked with a work thing.
Yeah, and that's I think MimeStream is trying to do that if you've got multiple Gmail accounts. But I think for me, I just really like the peace of mind knowing that, like, this icon means this thing. And it means, like, my Gmail stuff I can scan through really quickly, mark them all as read if I need to, and not have to worry about, like, I'm missing an email from a congregation member or something like that.
Now, I want to talk about Fastmail for a second. We've talked about this on the show a few times. I have switched to Fastmail about 2 years ago, and I've been very, very happy with the transition. If you're not going to use the Google stuff, I think Fastmail is probably the next thing you should look at. They've got online rules. It's very powerful. It seems like it's run very efficiently, and they know what they're doing. But you've emailed me a couple times about this Fastmail app for the Mac, Fmail 2. And I haven't tried it yet, to be honest with you. It's on my list, but tell me why, if I'm using a Fastmail account, I should be using that in lieu of something like Apple Mail.
Quite frankly, I just don't like Apple Mail very much.
Okay, well, that's fair. You're not alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And this Fmail 2 app is it basically just a wrapper around the website. So it would be akin to something like Mailplane used to be for Google.
Yeah.
It gives me quick access to setting up rules and filters, which is something I've tried to do a lot. So that's why I'm using it, and I just like having a separate app for my email. And I have kind of given up on Mail app. I keep hoping that it's going to get that Apple attention that a couple of apps have gotten over the past few years, but it never seems to be the year for Mail.
Just like I had my revelation about iPad and how you use the iPad. My revelation on mail apps is you just have to find one you don't hate.
Yes.
You don't look for one you love. Although I'm hearing ruminations, that we may be getting that the gang that's doing MimeStream may be looking at Fastmail as like their next implementation. And I hope that's true. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody over there, but I'm just hearing things. That might be good.
Yeah, that would be great. One of my main tools for filtering stuff is, I've in my Gmail account that I've had for a long time. I've got a lot of filters set up for mailing lists and things that I'm on, but I've been a SaneBox user for over 10 years. I know they've been a sponsor in the past. I don't know if they're sponsoring now, but they're just fantastic. And let me tell you, that Sane Later that just will identify a new email and put it into a secondary folder is great. But I think my favorite feature is still that Sane black hole, where I can just drag an email and know I'm never going to hear from this person again.
Preach it.
Yeah.
Because I will click your unsubscribe link, but I don't trust that I'm going to actually be unsubscribed from everyone that I unsubscribe to.
Yeah. In fact, some of them more nefarious folk use the unsubscribe button to confirm that that's a live body at the other end.
Exactly.
And then they just use it more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And my second trick, and I don't know if this is as well known, I know SaneBox can do this, but Fastmail can also do this, is I've got a few folders set up where emails only last a few days. I use this for, those deals emails that come in. Like I get one from Audible every day that tells me what's on sale at Audible, which is, coming useful, but the deals only last one day. So there's no reason to keep 7 days worth or 30 days worth. So it can automatically delete emails after a certain number of days. And I think Fastmail's got it. So it can be like 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 30 days, something like that. And, one of the things I've found with this is that then when I go back to my email and I'm searching for something, it's much easier to find what I'm looking for because there's not all this other cruft that in there that's giving me false positives on searches. And again, I think it just makes me feel good to know that I'm throwing away email automatically, that my computer is doing it for me, or my email provider is doing it for me. Obviously, you've got to be careful with this, but it's easy to filter things into specific folders and then say, okay, empty this folder, empty emails from this folder after 30 days. And I just, again, there's something about that just makes me happy.
Yeah, I have a folder that I kind of think of as like opportunities I may want to pursue. Sometimes emails come in with something like that, but I don't want to decide on it in the moment. And I'll put it in that folder and I have it. If I don't pursue it in 30 days, it just deletes the email. And
oh, wow. Yeah.
That's a little more extreme, I guess, but that's life, right? I just can't deal with the mental weight of all those emails sitting there. And I'm trying to get like more brutal about it.
Yeah, I mean, every email can be a possibility, but not every email is one. So
SaneBox and Fastmail at the same time. They do have overlapping features. What is your favorite part of SaneBox versus Fastmail? And I'll disclose that they are a sponsor of the show on occasion. I have no idea if they're sponsoring the show or not.
Well, yeah, I think the thing I like about Fastmail is how reliable it is.
Yeah.
And it is, literally fast mail. It's when I'm using it, even when I'm using it as an IMAP client, it works really well. It works really quickly. And SaneBox, again, is identifying new emails and sticking them into Sane Later or my inbox, depending on, with what their algorithm thinks. So I think they work really well together. I've got, and then if there's something that needs its own folder in Fastmail, I can set up a filter for it, but I don't have to. That Sane Later covers a multitude of sins where, if stuff goes into that, then it's good enough. I don't need to set up my own rule for it. And they're easy enough to set up, but they're just time consuming. And, I just like the automaticness of having SaneBox set up there.
One thing I've been doing, you talked earlier about how you get on a project related to the congregation and then suddenly the email starts flying fast and furious, is I've started to respond to that whenever it gets like out of control, and fairly early in the process, those can get out of control, is I just set up a shared page, whether it be a Google Doc or an Apple Note or a Craft page. It kind of depends who I'm dealing with. And I just say, everybody, I send an email, says, this is where we will deal with this from now on. No longer goes an email. And you can use Text Expander to set that up as a template. So if it's like a common style project, but the whole idea is to get it out of the inbox and just say, if you have questions or updates, update this document and don't send everybody email. And I have found that people are shockingly receptive to that. And it has really helped kind of get rid of that busy work email you were talking about.
Well, that sounds good. I'm not sure my folks are tech savvy enough to accept something like this, but that may be me underselling them. But I may try that next time I see an opportunity.
Yeah, you got to find a platform that's easy. Like a Google Doc is usually most people can find their way into a Google Doc if you give them a link. And then when you hit the sharing of it, you say that it's not like, you don't have to authorize each person. There's a way to share a Google Doc and say anybody with a link can come in here. Yeah, but, I deal with a lot of nerds, so that may be a little bit of a bias there.
It's a good problem to have.
What are some of your other tricks for dealing with email?
Oh, I mean, some of it is just personal. I almost want to say like personal training. Like I don't badge email ever. I just, it gives me anxiety just to see that I've got, this number of unread emails, and almost all the time it's nothing bad is in there. Usually if something dire has happened, I'm going to get a phone call rather than an email, but, it really doesn't matter how many emails I've got sitting in my Gmail folder or my Gmail account type of thing. And so, why would I let that badge sit there and tell me that, I've got 57 unread emails and things like that. I think, one of the key points for me is just getting to a place where I feel healthy about email, where I feel like email is no longer a thing that I'm scared of or overwhelmed by. And this combination of systems and really the setting up the different systems has helped that. But it's also a place where I feel like I've gone through it and I've checked it, and now I'm done with it for a while. Like my work email doesn't sit open all day. I'll open it in the morning just to check to make sure everything's copacetic, and then I'll open it again at noon, and then I'll open it again at like 3 or 4 o'clock before I'm getting ready to go. So I try not to live in my email. I think that's a very common sort of tip for people, but that's one that again, for my life, for my work, it doesn't require me to live there. I'm not waiting on sales responses or things like that Stephen might be dealing with, or Mike might be dealing with it, type of thing. So I can do that. I know not everybody can. I actually have a keyboard maestro set up that quits my work mail app at 6 p.m. Hopefully that doesn't, it was funny. We actually happened to have a meeting last night at 6 o'clock, and I had my email open for that, and all of a sudden it just went away, and I'm like, what happened? And I'm like, oh, right, I automated myself.
Yeah. I like that.
But, again, that's just one of the things that when I sit down at my computer at, 10 o'clock at night, just to, do something for myself, I don't want to accidentally see my inbox. And so I've set up a system where, my email client is gone away for a while. Marco Arman's got that great Quitter app that you can, just automatically quit apps after they've been idle for a while.
I love it.
Might want to set that up for your email client, because again, I had this experience several years ago when I was working on my doctorate. I was meeting with the director of the program, and we were having this really intense conversation. But every time her email dinged, she swiveled in her chair 90 degrees to check what the email was. And it really disrupted our whole flow of conversation, because she'd check it. It wouldn't, obviously seem to be that important that she needed to deal with it. She'd swivel back to me and she'd go, now, where were we?
Yeah.
And I just
rough.
thought, wow, that's, and I don't think, again, she was in a position of responsibility, and that was, she obviously felt like she needed to do that in her job. I don't feel the need to do that in my job. And if someone's in my office talking to me, even hearing that ding go off and that I've got a message, if people think you're too busy to be with them and to talk with them, they're less likely to come and talk to you. And as a pastor, I think that's really important, that people feel like they've got my full attention when they're talking to me. And whether I'm on the phone or whether they're in my office and we're just sitting there chatting, I don't want them to have that signal that, oh, he's got other things to do. Because my most important thing is that person in front of me. And I don't want anything pulling my attention apart either.
Do you get people giving you a hard time about not responding fast enough to email? Is that an issue at all for you?
It really isn't. Because I usually respond, either the same day or the next day. And again, I think people get used to what you teach them.
Yeah.
And people have learned that, if they need something immediate from me, and there's a note in the bulletin, for example, that says, Pastor Tim does not check his email on the weekends. If there's an emergency, call him. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of things that aren't emergency enough to get a phone call about that I would get an email about.
Sure.
And, again, so people are just used to that. And so, when there was something that came up and somebody did call me, they said, oh, I know that you don't check your email, so I wanted to let you know. And I was happy about that. And we were able to, have a conversation about it, and we dealt with it. But people have really learned. And again, I think people are willing to be flexible about it if they know what to expect. And I think they've learned what to expect from me.
Yeah, I think so much of it is setting those expectations, right? You can't always do it. You mentioned sales. That's definitely something where you can set some expectations, but you're still kind of always monitoring. But I think for a lot of people, the people that you converse with often on email, they kind of figure out how you do email. There was something that was really important to me in my last job before Relay. First of all, I use separate email apps like you do for that, had, work emails sequestered in its own application. But if I was working after 5 p.m., I set those messages to send in the morning. Just because
Yes.
I'm, still at work at 6:30 p.m. my client doesn't need to know that, because that does set some level of expectation that I'm around after 5 o'clock. And just because it's true one day doesn't mean it's going to be true the next.
Yeah, I literally was just going to mention this as something that I've done, and it's actually a feature request that I put in for the MimeStream folks, but apparently the API doesn't have any way to access the scheduled part of it. But Mailmate can do it. Mailmate, you can set when you want a message to send, but your email client has to be open. But it's something where I'll go to the Gmail interface and just say schedule send tomorrow morning at 8. And that, I think, is a great way to say, and I'm sure all of us have had this experience, when you email somebody, if somebody emails you and you email them right back, you're going to get a third email.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to respond back to your response. So I've even done it for that, where I've set my response to go out in like an hour or so, because I want to respond and it's important, but I don't want to get into a whole thing about it if we don't need to.
And that, like, if you get behind on email, that becomes a trap too, because then you respond to a bunch of email, but then you just generated just as much email. And it is a challenge, but I think you've got a pretty healthy attitude toward it, and seems like you found your peace.
Yeah, it's really, I think, a necessary survival tool for pastors, and I suspect for a lot of folks, is to figure out what your balance can be with email, because it's not going away. I mean, for any number of these different tools that have come around that have tried to replace it, I get as much email, if not more, than I've ever gotten before. So we definitely have to come to decide what we're going to do with it and what we're going to allow it to do to us.
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by Indeed. What's a game where no one wins? It's the waiting game. When it comes to hiring, don't wait for great talent to find you. Find them first with Indeed, because when you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites bouncing around searching for candidates with the right skills, you can use Indeed's powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. Indeed streamlines hiring with powerful tools that find you matched candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the very moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Indeed's hiring platform really is awesome because candidates you invite to apply, get this, they are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, again, according to US Indeed data. Even better, Indeed is the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements, making it an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times as many hires as all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest 2019. So join more than the 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/MPU. This offer is only good for a limited time, so go to Indeed.com/MPU. That's INDEED. Indeed.com/MPU to claim your $75 credit and to show them that you support this show by saying you heard about it on the podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Our thanks to Indeed for their support of the show and Relay FM.
TJ, you've been on the show several times, but something we've never talked to you about is how you use your iPhone. We always get into the super nerdy Mac automation stuff, but I know you've got some cool tricks on your iPhone too. So tell us what you're doing.
Okay, the smartest thing I've ever done on my iPhone is set up repeating reminders every year to call people on their birthday. Members of my congregation, it took me, an afternoon to go through we've got a computer program at the church that lists people's birthdays. Some of them only give me the month and the day and not the year, and that's fine. I don't need to know how old people are. But I went through and I set up reminders with their phone numbers in Do. And Do actually makes this really easy now. You can insert a contact into that Do field. It'll pull up the contacts field and you can just tap the phone number on there. It will automatically insert that. When that reminder comes up and you swipe to clear it, it will say, do you want to call this number or do you want to text message this number? And so at about 6:15 on any day where there's a birthday, I get a little pop-up. It says, it's so-and-so's birthday. I tap the thing. It says, you want to call them? I say, yes. I call them. A bunch of times I get an answering machine and I just wish them a happy birthday on their answering machine. But, the times that I do get people on their phone, they're thrilled that their pastor called them on their birthday. We talk for a couple minutes. They're never long phone calls. Although sometimes, every now and again, I find out, something that's been going on in somebody's life that I had no idea about because I called them on their birthday. And I honestly think it's one of the biggest things I've done for my ministry, and it's literally the easiest thing that I do. But people really like it. And there's an app called Card Hop that's put out by the FlexiBits folks, the people who make Fantastical. They have if you open their app on the iPhone, it's got a celebrations tab. And it will list you all of the birthdays and anniversaries you've got in your contacts. And again, it's linked to the contact. So you can, with a couple of taps, call people. You don't even have to go through the Do app if you've got Card Hop. And it's just, I don't know, to me, it's a special touch. It's an extra event. It's not an email. I mean, I don't know how many folks wished me happy birthday on Facebook, which was nice, but a couple of people called me on my birthday, and that was just so much nicer.
Yeah, it feels so anonymous when it's an email.
Right. So I think having a phone is worth it for that alone. So that's been one of my big tips, especially for pastors or other people. I don't know, maybe it works for anybody. I don't know, but definitely for pastors, I think it's just you've got to be pastoring a certain size congregation. I mean, if there was a 1,000-member congregation, I suppose I couldn't do it, but our congregation's not as big as that, so I don't have that worry. But it's a neat little. I was going to say it's a neat little trick, but it's not a trick. It's just reaching out to people and telling them that you care about them.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you have a lot of contacts to manage. Are you using groups? Is it just a giant mess? How do you go about that?
Yes, I've got about 800 contacts on my phone. And I've got congregation members. I've got family members of congregation members because, every now and again, someone will call me because, their mom or dad is sick or, in the hospital, and being able to keep that contact is important. I do have a lot of groups. I've got one group that's congregation members, like all my congregation members. And then I've got groups for committees. So I can email, just that committee, just those committee members. So I make a big use of groups on my phone. And I'm always afraid that, something's going to happen. I'm going to lose all my groups that I've put my time into. But contact syncing has been really reliable the last several years now. So it used to be a little bit sketchier, but now it seems to work great. And I haven't had any issues with duplicates or anything like that for a long time. So I do have a lot of groups. I wish focus modes would allow me to just select a group. I know, David, you've hit that drum a few times, and I'm right there with you, because when I set a focus mode and I don't want to let anybody get in touch with me, one of the things I do have to worry about is that sometimes I get a phone call because somebody's dying. And you'd hate to miss that phone call because I was in a focus mode.
Yeah.
Now, in reality, that doesn't happen all that often, but I'm always concerned about it.
At one time is horrible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's all you need, really. And as much as I might complain about how much email I get, a phone call is usually something more urgent, more important, and I want to be available to those. As I suspect you probably wanted to be available to your clients when you were doing the law stuff. And honestly, I'm really blessed that my congregation does not abuse my phone. Email is our primary method of communication. There are some people who will text me, which is also fine, but a phone call is usually something that marks this as, hey, this is important. And one of the things that I've learned, again, I don't know if this qualifies as a trick or a tip or what, but every now and again I'll get an email and I'll think to myself, this email, instead of replying to this email, I need to pick up the phone and make a phone call, because either there's a miscommunication that's happening, or of course you don't get tone of voice, so you don't
Yeah.
always know, there could be two ways of interpreting what's being said here. And I just want to get I want to talk to you. And so I can hear the inflection in your voice and hear, are you frustrated? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you, what's going on with you? And I think that's an important skill to be able to develop too, is to know when email is the wrong platform and when a phone call would be. And like most people, I joke about the phone app is the least used app on my phone, even though that's one of it's the primary name of the thing.
Yeah, it's in the name. Yeah,
it's in the name, but as far as importance goes, it's hard to oversell how important the phone is for those times when it does need to be used.
I have found an intermediary step there too by accident. I signed up for a Loom account for the labs where I do some stuff in the labs with Loom. And also it was good for kind of the people that are helping me to make videos to show them stuff when we need to do a customer support thing or whatnot. But then I started getting emails. Sometimes I get emails from people that are kind of personal in nature or something where I want to give a more personal reply. And like you say, text is very one-dimensional. So now I just make the Loom videos and send them to them, sometimes to a reply to an email. And they're very easy to make. You push one button, then it embeds a link, and it's off. And I have found that also to be kind of something in the middle of picking up the phone and calling somebody or just writing text back to them.
That's a really nifty tip. I hadn't thought about that. I've got a Loom account, but I haven't used it for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with your flock, I would imagine a Loom video wouldn't be enough. You should probably call them. But, there's sometimes it's someone you don't know that well, but you do want to send a personal message. I don't know. There's something there, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've got a kind of a phone number for your church, and you have a personal phone number, and someone told you to carry two phones. What happened when they told you that?
Yeah. One of my first days when I arrived here, they handed me this Android phone and said, "Here, the church gives you this," like it was a present. Mm-hmm. and I said, "Oh, no, thank you. I have my own phone." And they're like, "Well, the previous pastor was kind of hard to get a hold of. So we got this. So we'd always have a way to get in touch with you." And that, goes back to some other issues that they had with this other person or whatever. But I very quickly said, no, thank you to that. And I originally set up a Google Voice account with a local phone number. So people would have, something, they would recognize as a local. I'm in Plattsburgh, New York. They would recognize as a local Plattsburgh, New York phone number. But I recently changed that over with the iPhone to be a dual SIM in my phone instead of using Google Voice. Google Voice is great. It's free. It's one of the best parts about it. And Google seems to have forgotten that it exists and hasn't canceled it. So that's another great part of it. But I wanted to be able to use all the default apps and get all the integration features that are built into iOS when I was dealing with all my church folks, because that's the bulk of what I do. And you can set up a default when you've got a default SIM. When you've got a dual SIM, rather, you can set up which one is going to be the default number. And so I set that up for my Plattsburgh number. And you can set up on a per contact basis. Like when I call my mom, I always want to call her from my personal number. That it's going to be my number forever. And that's the number she's got in her phone. And it's going to show up on her caller ID as me. But when I'm calling people locally, I use my Plattsburgh number. It works for texts as well. I can text them from my church number, and it looks to them as the same thing as it always has. But it's it just gives me a way to separate them, and you can actually disable one of your SIMs. Like I'm going to go on vacation for a month, and if I was in a different situation, I might think about just disabling my secondary SIM.
Yeah.
It's really nice to have two phone numbers, again, kind of like the email thing, having that division of, work and private life, work and personal life. There's just something to that ability to segregate those out. And, one of the things with pastors is we do end up moving. And my long-term friends, my sort of personal non-church friends, I want them to be able to make sure they can contact me, and I've got a personal phone number that's not going to change. That's going to be mine for the rest of my life, hopefully. And but I can have a local number here that makes folks feel comfortable. And it was just a neat experience to me. And I'm surprised how well iOS handles it. And there's not really a lot talked about in there. I just kind of had to feel my way around and figure it out. But you can set things like which one's going to handle your default data, so you don't have to have data accounts, big data accounts or unlimited data accounts on both of them. The biggest downside, of course, is the price. You're paying for a second cell phone account, but I've got, I'm fortunate in that I've got a professional expenses account that I can cover this because they were expecting to be paying for a cell phone bill. I just sort of switched that over into my dual SIM. So my phone now has T-Mobile and Verizon on it, which also means I've pretty much guaranteed to have coverage wherever I go.
Yeah. And setting it up, I mean, one of the reasons I definitely wanted to talk about this during today's show, because we've never mentioned it in all these shows, and it really has got a lot easier. If somebody's listening and wants to do this with their phone, how do you get started? Well,
what I did is I actually used T-Mobile had an app you could download to use their eSIM. My 12 has a physical SIM and an eSIM on it. I think the 14 just has eSIM, doesn't it? Or is that going to be the 15? But I just downloaded this app. I tried T-Mobile for a while, and I had good coverage there. I went I called up T-Mobile and told them that I wanted to have an account on there, and I did everything over the phone. Didn't even have to go to a store or anything like that. And they were able to activate it, do everything on the phone over the internet. And it was really simple. I mean, it took probably 30 minutes for the whole thing to be taken care of from the time I started thinking about it until the time I was done and had this thing. And then you just, have a phone and it rings just like you would expect.
Yeah, and it is that easy. That's the point I wanted to make. If you've been holding off on this, you should just go do it.
Absolutely. And again, it might be something you try and find out that it's not for you, or, it might be something you try for a while. Or I would almost, I know you both have gone through buying a new car lately. My mother still gets phone calls from car dealerships. She bought her last car several years ago, but she can't seem to get off the list. It'd almost be worth it to have a temporary phone number for when you're buying a new car if you're dealing with some of these places. But
yeah, set up a burner for 1 month. Yeah,
I get it. Burner for a month type of thing. But again, for people who want to, for me, I initially thought I was going to want to divide my life more than I really wanted to. I do like this separation. I like having both the numbers, but it is such an easy thing that, it's really no more difficult than managing one. You go in, when I set up a new contact, I just go in and set their default number if I want to. Otherwise, it'll set to the default for all calls, which is my Plattsburgh number. And then it just works. And I can use the Messages app, and I can use the phone app, and I'm not having to, do anything weird to get my incoming or outgoing phone numbers. The caller ID is the other big thing that works. That's the thing that I really wanted. When I called somebody, I wanted to make sure that, my local Plattsburgh number was showing up for my Plattsburgh calls, and my personal number was showing up for my personal friends and things like that.
Well, if I was practicing law still, I would set this up today, because I had a lot of intermingling going on there, and this would have, but this just wasn't as easy back then, and now it is. So you've been informed. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Electric. Unbury yourself from IT tasks and get a free pair of Beats Solo 3 wireless headphones when you schedule a meeting. Just go to electric.ai/MPU. When leading your small business, it's not all glamour. In fact, sometimes it's a matter of spending hours onboarding an employee, which you're well equipped to deal with, but maybe you don't have time for. The team at Electric knows small businesses, maybe like yours, face these challenges, and that's why they're on hand to help with the time-consuming parts of your business, like standardized device security with best-in-class device management software, so you can implement the best practices across the board and be ready to scale, and employee onboarding and offboarding done for you, saving you an average of 8 hours per request. Plus, Electric will help you keep a single point of visibility into your IT environment to control your devices, networks, and applications. Their simplified reporting allows you to achieve and maintain compliance, and proactive IT recommendations and automated workflows make IT easy to manage for even non-technical users. And if you're hearing this and you think your company could use some of these services, but you're not sure where to start, Electric's experts will guide you through the process of establishing standardized IT procedures for your organization. Now, I know a lot of people listening to the show are pretty savvy and you understand computers and you probably understand a lot of IT, but the thing is, IT keeps changing. And unless you're spending all your time keeping up with it, you really do need a professional to help you. And by the way, if you're spending all your time keeping up with it, you're not doing the rest of your business, which really is your job. And the good news is Electric understands that if you are a savvy user, they can talk to you and explain in more detail exactly what they're doing and why, and you can make informed decisions. Now, for Mac Power Users listeners, Electric is offering a free pair of Beats Solo 3 headphones for taking a qualified meeting. Just go to electric.ai/MPU. Once again, that's electric.ai/MPU. Go there now to get your free pair of Beats Solo 3 headphones today for scheduling a meeting. And our thanks to Electric for their support of the Mac Power Users.
So TJ, I was in the Google Doc, running up to this episode, and all of a sudden, a topic named Weekend Wednesday showed up. What's this about?
This is not my idea, I have to admit. This is CGP Grey made a video where he talked about how 5 days is just a lot of days to work together. And how if you take one of the weekend days and you stuck it in the middle of the week, aka Wednesday, then you have 2 days where you're working, and then 3 days in his case. So you have 2 days when you're working, a day off on Wednesday, and then 3 days when you're working, and then a day off. Well, I set mine up a little differently. Of course, I'm working on Sundays. That's, sort of my big day. So I work from home on Monday. I work in the church office on Tuesday. I take Wednesday off. I'm in the church office on Thursday. I work from home on Friday. I take Saturday off. And let me tell you, it took a little bit of work to set this up. I had a couple of meetings that met on Wednesdays. But after I set this up, I love this. Again, this is not something everyone's going to be able to do. Gray was joking that, when he put this idea out, that people were going to say, well, that's fine for Gray. And maybe some people will be like, well, that's great for TJ. But it works great. It's less disruptive in a sense. I used to either take Friday. I've taken a couple of different days. For a while, I used to take Thursday off as my day off. I've taken Friday as my day off to try to get, 2 days together with Friday and Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that I was working on Friday. I was usually working on my sermon on Friday. So I wasn't really getting that day off. And it's easier to work more intensely on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday when you've had a break in the middle. It's like you've got that beginning of the week energy twice each week instead of once that has to last you for 5 days. And there's a great YouTube video that Gray put out about it. I would encourage folks to look at it. It's only a couple of minutes long, and he outlines it perfectly and talks about this, kind of energy level and things like that. One of his big features was that on the Saturday that he was working, because other people weren't working, he could really get focus time on that. For me, one of the big deals is because I'm not working on Wednesday and everybody else is, I can do all the things. I can go grocery shopping, or I can go see a movie. Go see a movie in the middle of the week. And actually, one of our movie theaters has $5 movies on Wednesdays. And it feels like I'm playing hooky, even though it's my legitimate day off.
And you do work every Sunday.
Yes, every Sunday, rain or shine.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's a big part of, why this works for me is because in my job, I was expected to take a day off during the week. Now, most of the pastors in previous years at this church always took Monday as their day off. I've never taken Monday as my day off because it always felt like I would still be so, focused on what the upcoming week anyway, that I wouldn't really get a day off on Monday. So it took a little bit of adjustment for people to learn. But again, there's a note in the bulletin that says, Pastor Tim the day off is Wednesday. And it's been okay. It's been, I've got people, again, I don't respond to my email on Wednesday. Every now and again, I have to say to somebody, oh, gee, I just saw this because it was off on my email yesterday. I was off yesterday, and nobody has minded. It's been a really good thing for me and a good thing for my focus and energy levels as I go through the week.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to compact work where you can. I mean, this is something David and I have both been doing, I think mostly behind the scenes, but I know in our conversations, trying to fit certain tasks into certain days. And I think that's applicable to really a lot of different type of work and a lot of different type of people. So for us, one thing we changed is we used to have the MPU planning call on Thursdays. Well, that was the only thing usually either of us had to do with MPU on Thursdays, other than, sort of the background hum of episode prep, which is ongoing. So we moved that call to Tuesdays before we sit down with our guests to record. And it's, it's a small thing, but now, we both know like Tuesdays MPU day, and it's I try not to do anything else on those days. And it's proven to be helpful. I think everyone, or at least a lot of people, have examples of that in their own work, things that are under your control in the schedule that maybe if you make one or two changes, you're probably not going to the grocery store on Wednesday like TJ is, but maybe it better aligns things on your schedule for other reasons.
I think that's so true. And I often think that we're worried that, this thing is on Thursday and it's always been on Thursday. So therefore, it can't ever change. And, when I suggested changing, one of the biggest thing we had to change is our elders meeting. It was once a month on a Wednesday. And I thought, this is going to be the big one. This is going to be the one that I can't change. So I was almost resigning myself to, okay, well, 1 week a month, I'm not going to be able to take Wednesday off. And I suggested, in a private conversation, just one-on-one with someone, talked about, I wanted to take Wednesday off. And they said, oh, we always used to meet on Tuesday until the previous pastor couldn't meet on Tuesday. So we met on Wednesday. And all of a sudden I went, oh, this isn't like carved in stone somewhere that it has to be on Wednesday. And now we've moved it and everyone adapted and nobody died. It was just one of these things where it wasn't nearly as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. And it does, lining these things up. And I've done this with my own life as far as the flow of the work that I do, sort of like what you were talking about with your call with David is. On Monday, I know there are certain things I'm going to do sermon preparation. And it's going to go like that through the week. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to make some of these changes, but I bet a lot of people could make them if they tried. And maybe not everything would work, but maybe some things would. And, getting that clumping together, I think has big advantages.
Totally. And I do think that a lot of times things that you think are big friction points turn out not to be, just like your elder meeting. I think a lot of people listening are like, well, this one thing, there's no way I could move it. And guess what? If you try, you might find it's a lot easier than you thought. I can't do weekend Wednesdays because my wife's job now, she gets Saturdays and Sundays off. And, I want to spend time with my sweetheart. So I try to have the same days. But I have kind of done this, like Stephen was saying, of trying to be more intentional about making days dedicated to certain things. And one of the things I've sort of landed on is making Mondays and Tuesdays kind of the days that I deal with other humans, and in terms of work. And so we do a lot of podcast recording then. I do a lot of meetings on those days. But then that leaves Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for me to create content for field guides and laps. And it really, when I can stick to that, I am so productive, and one of the beauties that I've discovered that I didn't really see when I started this is when people want to commit to do a call with me or something, I just say, okay, you got to get a Monday or Tuesday. And the next time I have time available is 2 weeks from Tuesday. And it just works. And people are like, okay, that's fine. And then I'm able to largely keep that stuff contained in those days. And, that's part of my job. I want to spend time talking to people, but I also want to make stuff. And if I let, calls with other people happen on any old day, before you know it, I'm not making anything.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised how how much respect people are willing to have if, again, you kind of set the parameters of, that it goes back to the old adage of, we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
If people learn that, this is how my schedule is, and, it's different if it's an emergency. But again, I think a lot of times we pre-assume the emergency.
Yeah.
Obviously, if somebody's in the hospital, dying on a Wednesday, I'm going to the hospital on a Wednesday. That's just something I'm going to do. But you know what? That hasn't actually happened in the, year and a half I've been doing this. And so I know I'm available. They know I'm available. But at the same point, they're respectful of the time off that I've had. And it's been really great. So
I understand hospitals, but what about shotgun weddings? I mean, sometimes that may have to happen on a Wednesday, right?
The age demographic of my congregation does not involve a lot of shotgun weddings.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to set the record straight.
So as you know, we like to wind down these interviews with some favorite apps and services, things that are bringing you joy. You came with quite the list, but let's start with Lossless Cut. This is something that's new to me.
Yeah, this is actually replacement for QuickTime 7 Pro, which died in the 32-bit apocalypse a few years back. One thing that QuickTime 7 Pro could do that the new version of QuickTime doesn't do is cuts in the middle of, you can trim stuff off the beginning of the end in QuickTime, but the QuickTime 7 could do, cuts in between. Lossless Cut is a free application. I think it's an Electron app because it works on Windows and Mac and things like that. It's not beautiful, but I'm not using it for a long time. One of the things I use this for is to edit the Zoom video every week from worship. We post that for people who weren't able to see it, weren't able to join the Zoom call. And again, I'm cutting it down to, I actually post 2 videos. One is the full service and one is just the sermon. And this is a free tool, and it allows you to do those trims on a bunch of different file formats. It's actually using FFmpeg underneath the hood. So FFmpeg is a really powerful program that's really complicated to use if you're not familiar with how to use it. And I'm somebody who's not. I've used a couple of different tools that are front ends to it, and this is one that I have found that I haven't found anything else like it. I actually learned about this one when I was looking for a QuickTime 7 replacement, and it's been great. You can find it on GitHub under Lossless Cut.
All right, another one on your list. I think we might have mentioned it, but it deserves another mention, is Downy. Tell us what you're doing with that one.
Oh, I absolutely love Downy. Downy is the app that just makes me happy. Whenever I find a video online that I want to keep, I throw it to Downy, and Downy downloads it. It doesn't matter what site it's from, Downy can download it. It's Down, IE is how you spell it. It's from Charlie Monroe, who's a great developer who's done some other stuff as well, but I think this is probably the app he's best known for. And it's updated all the time. And all it does is download videos. And whether that's a YouTube video or something that you found on some random website, it works great. Mm-hmm. And then I can throw things into my Plex server and have them for later viewing.
I love this because it's the great killer of algorithms, because you just download the videos you want to watch and you don't get sucked into like the YouTube vortex.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's available on SetApp too.
One thing I do with it is it has some post-processing options, and one is just give me the audio. And sometimes I'll come across interviews on YouTube that I don't need to watch. Maybe I want to listen, on my phone later, and I'll export the audio and then upload that to Overcast on the web for listening later. And it's a fantastic way to like blast through some interviews that don't necessarily need to be video.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And that's something that I've done as well is, when I don't need 2 talking heads looking at each other, I'd much rather throw something into Overcast.
Another one on your list is a first timer to the Mac Power users, Shortcut.
Yeah, this app was around for a while, and then the developer got like sidetracked into a whole bunch of different projects, and I thought it was dead. And actually, Federico mentioned it a few weeks ago on Connected. And I was really happy to see that it had regained life. And Shortcat is kind of like Shortcut. It allows you to interact with things on the screen without using the mouse. It's kind of hard to explain. If you go to the website, it's got a little video or a little GIF that shows you how it works. And you just start typing things and it identifies things on the screen that you might want to click on. And it's a fun little app. It's one that I'm just starting to reuse because, like I said, it was resting for a long time, and I thought it was a dead parrot. But I'm glad to find out that it was not.
The short cat lives.
Yes.
Give us an example of where you're using it, just to give people context.
Sure. One of the things I'll often like to do with it is when I've got a bunch of buttons on a screen, like I use it for. I used to be able to use like 1 through 9 on my bookmarks in Safari. I think you can still do this, but I think I've got more than 9 up there now. And so, I can just type my bookmark and it'll click the bookmark for me. Or click a button on the screen type of thing that anytime I want to do that I don't know if it actually saves me time, but I like using my keyboard more than my mouse. So more than my trackpad too. So it's just anytime you want to interact with something, anytime you want to click a button or something like that on screen real quick without getting into, mousing over to it.
Another one of my favorites on your list is Name Wrangler.
Yeah, Name Wrangler is a great app, and I had it for a long time, and it was one of these, it's by Manytricks, the company Manytricks.com. And there are lots of these apps around. I think Name Wrangler is one of the better ones. I've got a bunch of files and I want to rename them. And I always thought to myself, well, I'm a command line guy. I can do this in the terminal. And then I made a mistake one day and rewrote about 12 files to all have the same name.
Yeah. I thought he was going to say I rewrote 12,000 file names because that you could do that as well.
You could do that too.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I ended up overwriting all these files onto one file, which, as you may have guessed, didn't work out too well for me. So yeah, but it bulk renames files. It will let you, sequence them if you want or do all sorts of transformations. And one of the things I love is that you can sort of stack up steps along the way, and it'll show you what if you do these rules, this is what you'll end up with. And it has an undo feature. And let me tell you, that undo feature is worth its weight in gold, because if you ever go through something and you do something wrong, you can't undo on the command line. So this has been a butt saver for me. And I no longer try to do this on my own.
Well, one of the notes TJ wrote in the Outline Gang, it says, Manytricks apps, if they make it, I buy it. And you know what? I agree. I think Manytricks is one of the greatest little utility developers for the Mac.
They're absolutely fabulous. I really do. I mean, they sell their apps non-subscription, but I feel like it's an auto buy as soon as I see a new app of theirs pop up. I could, if you just go to manytricks.com and look around, I bet you'll find something that you like.
You got any favorites here, Steven?
I mean, I agree with TJ. They're all incredible. Moom, I think, is one that we talk about a lot. It's a window management where you can zoom and snap windows. There's a bunch of apps like that, but Moom is one of the better ones for sure. But yes, Name Wrangler definitely gets a thumbs up from me as well. This is one of those things you can do in the Finder. Like Finder has rename file, but it's very basic. And if you need to sort of upgrade that and be able to do more, wholeheartedly agree with the pick. Another one here on this list is Transloader, which pitches itself as a way to automatically have things download on your Mac, but starting them remotely from another device. So, tell me some use cases for that.
Oh, sure. This is, just the one that often what I would do if I was on my phone or something and, sort of reading my RSS late at night, I'd see an app that I want to download, but I'm on my phone, so I can't download it. And so what I would usually do is stick it in a drafts note, and then the next time I'm at my Mac, I would open up drafts and copy the link and download the file. Well, instead of doing that, what I can do is I can copy the URL to download the app, and put it into Transloader. And Transloader on my iPhone or iPad will send the link up to iCloud. And on my Mac, there's a little program. Transloader has a Mac program as well. And it will see that a new URL has been added. It will go to that URL and it will either download the file if it can, or if it can't, it will open the web page. So I come back to my Mac and the file's already downloaded. Or, I wanted to read an article, something like that on my Mac. I come back to my Mac and the web page is right there. And I go, oh, right, I wanted to read that, rather than having to, go and search something out or remember to do it later. I've largely given up on read later because I realized that I file stuff away and I don't actually read it. But if I want to read something on my Mac instead of my iPhone for some reason, I'll use Transloader and just throw the page up there. Transloader also works with Downy. So if I want to download a video from my iPhone, I can send the URL of the YouTube link or whatever to Transloader, and it will throw it over to Downy and download the video there. So it'll be waiting for me when I get back.
Very cool.
Well, TJ, I'm so glad we were able to get you back on this show. It has been too long. And as always, you deliver the goods. So much interesting, nerdy stuff we talked about today. If people want to learn more, TJ, where do they find you?
Well, I am on Mastodon. I've largely left Twitter, as I think, well, we've all talked about that enough. But so I am on mastodon.social as TJ Luoma. I'm just starting out there. So if you're on Mastodon, want to say hi, that would be great. I've just started following a couple of people, but would love to find some more MPU listener folks to be friends with on Mastodon. I very occasionally post at rhymeswithdiploma.com. Or you can find me on the MPU forums. It's TJ Luoma there as well. And you can send me a message through that site as well.
And that's at talk.macpowerusers.com.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, TJ. And also thank you to our sponsors, 1Password, Indeed, and Electric. We are the Mac Power Users. You can find us at relay.fm/MPU. And we'll see you next time.